Alright, everybody, hello and welcome. As always, I'm Sean. This is another episode of Reserve Team Rankings, where each week we take a different topic in and around Australian and New Zealand football and we put it in a ranking list, rating from All-Star all the way down to get in the bin for things that we like in and around Australian football. There's a million different topics that we see every week. If you've got your own suggestions, by all means, drop them in the comment section below. Today we're going to be looking at something near and dear to my heart, graphical design, whatever else, in and around the league itself, specifically relating to Australian and New Zealand football logos. So we're going to be looking at stuff from the national teams. We're going to be looking at stuff from the clubs in and around the A-League and W-League competition as well. But I'm not alone. This week, making his debut on the channel, first time appearance for Michael Ireland. Michael, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me, Sean. It's certainly been good to see the start of the reserve team and the content we've been creating, and looking forward to the next hour and a bit.
Yeah, I'm still hopeful that, when we look back in future on the initial content that we put up on the channel, we look back and think we used to suck and now we're magnificent. And I think we're very much still in our infancy in that respect. But, so far so good. Everything's going pretty well. It's a nice way to spend an afternoon at least. And it's a beautiful day today in Melbourne, which is where you're based as well. So I think a perfect time for us to chat football if you're happy to get stuck in and start putting these into different categories.
Why not? We've got a lot to get through.
Yeah, for sure. Now, just as a general kind of feedback, there are some good logos around the league. There are some poor logos. It'll be interesting to see how our opinions differ. Do you have any overall thoughts around different club logos and what you think of being like essential to a good club logo in and around Australian football?
I certainly think, and we'll probably, it'll be interesting to see how my views compare to yourselves and to the viewers. I think, in my opinion, I think a lot of the club logos have become a little bit more professional as the A-League has matured, and I certainly think that just having nice colours and just being representative to start off with was probably the aim, and now a lot of the newer logos that are coming in are blending a lot better into kits. Probably see that with some of the updated logos that some of the clubs have done recently as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't stress, mate. If there's anyone that disagrees with you, they will let you know immediately in the comment section below and over on Twitter if you've gotten anything horrifically wrong for their club. We did our national championship tier list last week, and it was well received by the majority of people, but the people that disagreed, they let us know loud and they let us know early. I think the interesting point that you've noted is kind of as the A-League matures as well. As we go through a lot of these, we are doing every logo. So like we're doing the club's first logo. If they've had an update, if they've had a couple of updates, we're going to be ranking each and every one. But it is very interesting to look at all kind of the season one logos and look at how clubs have tried to create their own identity and their own brand and the way that they've changed over time. So it is pretty interesting stuff. We're not, branding experts. We're not graphic design experts or anything like that, but we can provide the best opinion out there, which is a fan opinion as to where these ones sit. But as always, if you are watching, you can let us know in the comment section below if we've gotten anything terribly wrong. So the first one up, Michael, actually, before we get stuck into that, I should also go through our ranking rules because they are kind of our fallback. If we have immediate thoughts and opinions on where something sits, if we're aligned, we will put it in that area. But if we get any tough ones, if we get any tricky ones, we've put together 4 ranking rules to help guide us on where these need to sit in a particular tier list. First rule, beauty. Does it look good? Straight off the bat. When you look at this, does it make you feel sick? Does it make you feel good? Would you happily wear a kit that had this on the crest? The second is local representation. Is there anything within that logo that represents the area that the team is from? The colour scheme, does it match up with the club colours, the region, whatever else? And the kit factor, how good does it look printed on a kit? Would you be happy wearing a kit that had this logo on it, or would you be a little bit embarrassed that happens to be the main representation of your team? So we'll follow each of those rules in case we get into any issues, but I think, Michael, for the majority of them, we're probably going to be pretty close with everything, and I'll of course give you the opportunity to sell me on a few of your favourites throughout the course of the afternoon as well. But if you're ready to go, let's get stuck straight in.
Let's have a look.
Perfect. All right, so the first one that is up on the sheet here is Football Federation Australia. Now, we are pretty much just starting from the A-League era. So this was the FFA logo from 2005 through to 2018. It feels like it existed for way longer than I think it perhaps did. I thought this was like a logo that had been around for 20 years. It did get an update, which we'll show you guys next in a moment. But what are some of your initial thoughts on the old FFA logo, Michael?
Obviously, it was around for a while. It's probably stuck in the memory of a lot of Australian football fans, people that are knowledgeable about the game. I think the one thing that I've always sort of thought was quite interesting and maybe a bit inconsistent is the blue randomly in the logo, like yellow and gold and blue isn't necessarily the combination of colours that's synonymous with Australian football. It's either green and gold or it's not. But I don't know. It seemed to work. It's simple. It's probably better than a lot of other, uh, national federations around the world. So it certainly worked. It was consistent with all the states as well. So that's always a tick as well for me.
Yeah, they love that branding of getting a national logo and then state logos that are based on the same template, same design, just different color variations. We're early doors now. We can do this one of two ways. We can put this on the board and then discuss it with the next logo, which is actually the updated FFA logo, and put them maybe side by side and see where they fit. Maybe for the time being, we drop this one into needs improvement, and then we bring up the next one and we'll put them side by side and see which we think is better. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think so. Like I say, I think we do have a lot to get through, so we probably don't want to start the decent list off with such a high bar to start off with. So I think that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the one that rambles further than anybody else does, mate. So, it'll be me getting off topic and me dragging you into weird discussions about things more than the other way around. But the next one up, you can see it here, is the updated Football Federation Australia logo. In use since 2018, it is still the current logo. Again, like the previous one, it does have its own colour palette and colour scheme for the different state bodies. It's also got the same colour palette or individual colour palettes for each of the A-League clubs. What do you think about this one, just looking at it immediately? Is it an improvement on the previous FFA logo? What are some of your thoughts and feelings?
Yeah. Well, I do remember when it came out, there was some eye rolls amongst soccer Twitter about it, but I do think by and large it's a nicer look, it's a cleaner look. A big fan of, I guess, the green and gold there. Like I said before, it's probably corrects that maybe slight issue that the old logo did have. And as we'll get into as well, it probably made for some cleaner branding across all the various leagues as well. So I think definitely it's got to be above the old FFA logo somewhere. I'm thinking, maybe decent might be the way to go.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good place to put it. I think when it initially came out, because there's always that ridiculous amount of money that they spend on these marketing exercises, and that they spend paying some graphic designer for this, this might come up with some of our other logos that we talk about as well. If you have to put a football on it, you're kind of missing the point a little bit about creating your own club identity. I think for a national organisation, though, it's a little bit better. I think it's an improvement, like you've said, on the previous logo. I like that it's got the individual colour scheme formatting for the different areas, for the different clubs in the A-League as well. So definitely an improvement. I don't think it's all-star category, so I think we can comfortably put it in decent, and then, pretty much there's a few others that we're going to look at relating specifically to the Matildas and Socceroos and a few of the other national sides that probably sit alongside it as being decent options, but not the greatest that we've ever seen, not anything revolutionary, so to speak. So I think a decent one to start with early doors there. We now jump across the ditch though. We're going to go and have a look at our Anzac brethren with the New Zealand football logo. So they've actually had this logo in circulation for quite a while. From 2004 is when this was first introduced. Prior to that, they were known as Soccer New Zealand, but once they made that transition, they've kept this logo all the way through. It adorns both the All Whites and the Silver Ferns, or the Football Ferns, sorry, their national team logos, and it is the New Zealand football logo. What are some of your thoughts initially, and whereabouts would you think this one sits?
Look, I think it's decent. I think probably there's some people that would call it basic. I think it is pretty straightforward. But like we were just mentioning before, one of the key elements of a nice logo is how good it does look on a kit, and especially their new designs. But I think it looks really fresh. Again, it's not doing a lot, but it is representative of the country, and I just think it without being astonishing or eye catching, I think it definitely does the job.
Yeah, I mean, it's not anything revolutionary. I don't look at it and think that is incredibly smart or that makes me think. But like you said, it matches all of their kit structures. They always wear an all-white kit with black accents on it. The logo matches that. I think it's very on point for their branding as far as the All Whites and Football Fans concerned. I think it's decent. It could maybe do with an update. I would like to see potentially, some more colour palette swaps for clubs or competitions, or maybe something slightly different, some slight variation for the men's and women's football programs that they've got. But yeah, I think if we put FFAs in decent, we have to put New Zealand football alongside of it. It's just a nice little balance there. The next couple, I think we're going to reel these off relatively quickly. So we've got upcoming logos, and I'll just fire through displaying these on the screen now. For the Australia overall branding, this isn't men's or women's football. The update that came with that for the Westfield Matildas, this logo was in use right up until 2018, or for the 2018 season when Westfield took over as the Matildas naming rights sponsor. Later Later in 2018, a new logo came in for Westfield Matildas following the same logo structure. Same scenario for the Caltex Socceroos in 2018, and then in late 2018 to 2019, before Caltex ceased to sponsor the Australian national side, they had their own version of the branded logo as well. The Australia logo, of course, another one in that bucket for our men's national team, our Olyroos, whoever else, and the PARAROOS as well. Here's where my head's at, Michael, and by all means jump in and let me know. I think we pretty much stay consistent across each of these and just drop the old logos in alongside the previous structure, and then the new logos I think we pretty much just throw up alongside their compatriots. There isn't a great deal of difference and variation, but we want to make sure that we get all of our different teams represented at some point on this list, because I know if we don't, someone will fire off in the comment section that the PARAROOS logo is different to all the others, and that Westfield's not there and Caltex isn't there and all that sort of stuff. What do you think about the current placement?
It's fine. I think certainly to be consistent, you put them in the categories of the corresponding logos there. I'd probably put the FFA logo below all the other ones. The old FFA logo, I should say. Sorry, in the needs improvement, just because it is that blue that's a little bit inconsistent. That again, probably we are nitpicking. We're probably going to be pulling in hairs with some of these ones. So I think by and large, it's pretty good.
Yeah, cool. And I think at the same time, we'll put the PARAROOS up there alongside Australia, because I think those big... If you've got a national team, then you should integrate any sponsors in the existing colour palette. You shouldn't have to add in, teal and red for Caltex or red for Westfield or whatever else. I think it just takes a little bit away from it. So we might maybe we'll even put what would you think about putting the Socceroos and Matildas, Caltex and Westfield logos down in needs improvement? Do you think that's fair?
Sponsorship revenue is important. I mean, it's probably something you can't help, but I guess if you're going to put them down, you probably still put them ahead of all the other ones. So maybe at the very top of needs improvement.
Yeah, I'm very fussy with this sort of stuff, Michael. You'll figure out quickly. My all-star tier is like elite level. I only expect to get maybe 3 or 4 an episode. My decent tier is sometimes a little bit bigger. I'm very critical. So we might see needs improvement and get in the bin being 2 of our more populated ones throughout the week. But by all means, keep bringing that positivity. Keep telling me when I need to put stuff higher. We'll put them there for the moment, and then maybe at the end we'll go through our decent tier. We'll go through needs improvement, and we'll see if there's any that we want to bring up or move down based on the strength of the other logos in the particular group. But the next one that's going to come up on our list is jumping forward to the original Hyundai A-League logo. In place for the initial inauguration of the competition, I think it was first revealed in late 2004, and we used right up until this past season, right in January of 2020. So it had quite the run in the competition itself. What are some of your thoughts on the original A-League logo and how it represented the league?
Yeah. I think definitely the sort of the weird V sort of shapes on the logo represented the 8 inaugural clubs of the competition. I think they phased it out a couple of years ago, bring in when all the other branding came in. But obviously, up until very recently, Hyundai has been very synonymous with the competition. So it is iconic in its own way. I don't think it's the most amazing looking top flight competition logo in the world, but I think much like the start of the A-League, it was iconic for the time. So
so you are correct. So this logo was in place from 2004 to 2018 when Hyundai withdrew its sponsorship. And then the new... I take that back. When the new A-League logo was brought in, which I'll actually bring up on the screen now so that everyone can see exactly what we're talking about. And it was only in 2020 that Hyundai withdrew their sponsorship and the Hyundai portion was dropped from this A-League logo that we can see on the screen now. So yes. You are correct in that. Where would you initially put, you think, the original A-League logo?
I can't put it in decent, to be honest, because I think one of the problems with it was that it was very... one size fits all. It was on every kit without any variation. Didn't matter if that club was wearing sky blue or purple or orange or whatever color. I just think that probably it was fine for the time, but yeah, it definitely needed improvement, and thankfully we got that improvement.
I mean, you mentioned the 8, crest to it, the 8 little, I don't know what you'd even call them, almost V chevron designs that are in here to represent the 8 inaugural clubs. We actually only had 8 teams for 5 seasons of the A-League before we added additional teams. Yes, some of them failed and disappeared, but it's weird that it took them so long to actually change this logo to try and represent more of the football community, more of the clubs that they were adding to the league each season. So, yeah, I think Topper needs improvement is pretty much the highest that I would put at it. But it's not a terrible logo. I just think the one that came in, which we're looking at on the screen now, the Under A-League logo, is a little bit better. Where would you think that one might sit in and around our tier list?
Yeah, I think somewhere similar to where we've put the Australia and PARAROOS new branding logos, yeah, I think definitely that the advantage of being able to brand it in the club colours, I think, was a really nice professional addition to the marketing of the league. Victory could put theirs in, navy and white, and all the other clubs as well. So I think that's a real advantage. Hopefully it doesn't stay in that state for long. We do have a sponsor coming in soon, but I guess that's the way it is for now.
Yeah, I mean, that's 2020 for us, right? Like, anything that can go wrong will go wrong. So hopefully, who knows? Hopefully it's not anything like Jim's mowing, because he turned out to be a little bit nuts as coronavirus kind of took over Victoria and a few other things. But I think there are some interested parties looking to secure sponsorship for the league. So hopefully that comes sooner rather than later. Not that we ever want to make a tier list and be out of date a week later, but I think in this instance, we'd be more than happy to go back and apply a correction. I do also like, it's got the orange coating to it. We'll talk about some of the other clubs for the other leagues as well. I think it's good that there's consistency in the logo, but there is a different colour palette to provide different variations for the other leagues. The next one that we're going to jump into is the original W League logo. It commenced in 2008 with the advent of the Westfield W League, and this one ran all the way to 2017 when the existing W League logo is introduced. I think potentially, and by all means correct me, Michael, if you disagree, this one probably goes alongside the old A-League logo, where it served a purpose at a time, but it is really, when you look at it, kind of a little bit outdated and a little bit part of a bygone era.
100%. I mean, it looks like a proper badge for a league. I think if you look around the world, and particularly in Europe, you do see that style of badge where it's all enclosed in a couple of shapes. But it's not very eye-catching. It's not the most memorable logo, and I think it's definitely served its purpose. Obviously, the Westfield branding had to be as prominent as possible for that sponsorship dollar, but it is what it is, really. I think it's definitely a bygone era.
That was the lower era, getting Westfield on everything as big and bold as we can. We jump forward to the next one, the current W League logo, though it's still managed by Westfield or still sponsored by Westfield, so this one is up to date. What are some of your thoughts on the red W League logo since their rebrand? This one's been in place from 2017 right up until today.
Look, I don't know about you, but I think this is probably the best of the lot as far as the new branding above the A-League, above the national teams. I think purely because they've used the Westfield red and basically, made that branding synonymous with the league. I think it's quite clever marketing, and it's only a little thing, really. At the end of the day, it still probably sits alongside the other ones, but I just think it just makes that slight edge over the rest of them. That they're able to, I think Foxtel might have been the same scenario with the Y League for a bit of time, but I think it really achieved it quite nicely with the W League.
Yeah, I would agree. I think this one's very sharp. I don't know if it's my favourite, and I only say that because there's another one coming up in a moment, which we'll talk about, that I think is quite sharp looking, but we might group those two together for the moment, the W League and A-League current logos, and then maybe we'll have a discussion about those with an additional one to see where they position. And maybe you could convince me, Michael, in a moment, if W League hits the All-Star tier, or if we think it's at the top of decent. We are going to fire through a couple of the ones that you just mentioned, including the Youth League. This inaugural Foxtel National Youth League logo, which looks like it was made by someone on MS Paint. This is the highest quality image that I could find for this logo. I'm not a massive fan of it, Michael. I think this might potentially be our first Get in the Bin nomination because there's about 4 different fonts on it. It's basically just a copy and paste of the existing A-League logo. How kind do you think we should be to this one?
Not very, to be honest. I'm not sure why they went for a wide and short logo. I think because obviously the competition name was a real mouthful. They probably should have called it the Y League from the very start. It is a bit of a mess. Probably as forgettable as the league is, which is a bit of a sad state of affairs to say that. But I definitely agree with Get in the Bin.
They only rebranded it to the Y League in 2017, so this logo actually existed for 9 years, which is most of the clubs never actually used it. The kits that they wore were just the A-League replica kits, of course. But it blew my mind looking into these logos how much it changed, and it was really, I think, when Foxtel dropped the naming rights to the Youth League that they actually started to think, okay, we need to update it. It does bring us to our next one as well, which is following the similar format to what we've seen with the Matildas and the A-League itself, the current Youth League logo with that Foxtel logo brightly on there. I would say we probably have to put this one in the same category as the A-League, but given the way Foxtel's currently treat, and this is my bias just creeping in, Michael, so by all means correct me if you disagree. I think the way Foxtel's currently treating football and treating the A-League, we have to put it at the bottom of those decent tier ones that we're talking about relating to the W League and A-League itself. What are some of your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I think the less said about Foxtel's relationship with football at the moment, the better. It is not in the best of shape, really. But yeah, look, if you just looked at it on a purely graphical logo, representation of it, I think it's a huge improvement on the previous league logo for the Y League, and it would be fair enough to put it alongside the similar ones up there.
Yeah, I agree. There's one weird thing, and I'm going to jump ahead to the next logo, which is this very, very sharp-looking blue E-League logo. I'm not sure why the Y-League logo doesn't have its own colour. Like, I think it would look much better and probably higher on the list if it was like, a green or a unique colour to differentiate it from the A-League. I think the fact that it's just the same colours as the A-League kind of makes you think it's a second-tier league to it, almost. Like, it's not worthy of its own logo to an extent. But moving forward to this E-League one, I actually quite like this blue. I think this is a good variation. I think it's a good colour scheme. I'm happy to defer to you and your judgment as to where you think it sits, but I put this in the W League logos as being probably the best two, just because of that differentiation and that unique colour palette they've provided. What do you think?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's a bit of a toss of the coin, which of the two are better. I probably had the W League one slightly higher, but it's much of a muchness. It's blue probably reminds you of the lights on a gaming keyboard or something like that. So I guess it was trying to find that that color that can make people have that click in their heads that that's what it's for. Again, I agree on the Y League. I think that's a really good point that maybe they all should have had their own color, and I think the E League ones, the color is probably the most iconic thing about it, to be honest. I know it's certainly improving in its popularity, but definitely the logo is a good place to start.
Yeah, they need to add Football Manager to the E-League roster so that I can get involved with it. But other than that, they're not doing too badly trying to get the FIFA competitions and stuff out there. It helps them, integrate the youth and or what are all the kids talking about on the playground. It's probably FIFA 21 and their ultimate teams and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, I think that one sits nicely in there. I'm happy to put the Matildas in top. I think, again, toss of a coin between those two. They're both, I think, excellent. I think that's great that they're getting a bit of unique representation as well. If we went back 10 years, it'd probably get just the same logo as everything else, but just with a different word underneath it. We head now into our first club logo. Now, this is one that perhaps, Mike, I'm not sure how familiar you are with it. There's potentially listeners and viewers that haven't actually seen this logo in their lifetimes following the A-League itself. This is for the New Zealand Knights Football Club. Of course, they weren't around a long time. They were announced in 2004. Late 2004 is when this logo was released. It's not off-center in the image. This is very deliberate. I centered all of the logos in these squares. For whatever reason, the Knights Lance, or whatever you're supposed to call this, goes flying off to the right-hand side. I don't know why. This comes up a few different times. It's off-centre as far as everything. We'll talk about the Queensland logos when we eventually get to them. Do you remember the New Zealand Knights at all, Michael? And do you remember much of seeing this logo in and around the A-League itself?
It's probably just before, sort of, as I was starting to follow Australian football in a bit more depth. But as you do, when you pick up something, you go back and do. In coming across this logo, I think I'm more confused every time I look at it, to be honest. I'm really not sure what's going on with the font. I think the drawing looks like it was done in about 10 minutes. And yeah, the lack of centering is bizarre. Obviously, if it's on a kit, you're not going to center it. You're going to center it based on the rest of the logo, and you're going to ignore the way it's drawn, I guess. But I don't know. maybe I'm being a bit harsh in saying this, but it's probably symbolic of a club that won 6 games in 2 seasons.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't last long. It was gone by 2007
No.
as the club was. This screams to me like a clip art logo. Like, somebody just sat down one afternoon in an office building and found a picture of a knight and put the club colours in there and then dropped a football in there, some random Champions League football they probably found in Google. I'm not sure why the football doesn't sit in the centre of the like the shield either. It's weirdly off towards the top. I think this is our second get in the bin category, but I'm happy to defer to you and your judgment.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to get much worse than in the list that we've got at the moment. I don't mean to call it too early, but I definitely think it needs to go in the bottom tier, no matter. I think the only caveat is at least it's not the NSL team that preceded them, the Football Kings with the Z.
Yes.
That's probably the one thing that probably is a slight improvement. At least it was better than what they had before.
Yeah, this would be a 3-hour show if we tried to get all of the old NSL logos in it, because I think there were 3 or 4 new teams added to the league and leaving the league every season. There's a ridiculous amount that come through there. But, maybe that's podcast content for another week, mate. We'll sit down again and go through all of those. Jumping forward to a team that sadly, like we already spoke about one team that wasn't in the league for very long, another side that didn't quite get probably the length of time in the division that they deserved, the North Queensland Fury, of course, joining the A-League in 2008. Sadly, demise in 2011. We're not going to speak too much further about Northern Fury, the Phoenix club that rose up out of the ashes, because they have never represented at a national level. Do you remember much of the North Queensland Fury when they came in, and what do you think of their logo?
I think mainly because of their colours and their logo and their iconic kit. They were definitely one of my second or third favourite teams at the time. I think the font is terrific. I think it really works. It's a shame it didn't last. But I don't think that they're even around in NPL anymore. But certainly while it was there, I think it was really great to see a bit of a refreshing brand in the A-League. And for me, I think it's probably our first All-Star Elite category logo.
Big shout, very big shout. I probably wouldn't have put it that high, to be honest, but I'm happy to go with you. The reason that I wouldn't, and I'm going to be a real dick about this as we continue throughout the course of this, if you have to put a football on your logo, like you kind of... If people aren't able to identify what you are without necessarily having that, hexagonal football shape that we see all over the place, I kind of think you're not doing the best way of promoting your club. I think they've done a great job with it. I like as you've said, the fonts relating to it. I like the two-tone nature of the colours that are on there. I think Fury is a hard thing to represent when you're trying to describe it graphically, and I think they did a good job with that. The thing that brings it down for me is just that football, but I'm happy to put it in All-Star category, and then maybe once we've got all of our All-Star tier there, maybe we compare a few of them and see if we still think it fits in that particular group. But I think for right now, absolutely fine. Jumping forward to the next one, another of the expansion clubs and another Queensland team, Gold Coast United. We are looking at their A-League only logo. They have brought a new one out for their NPL side, which I think is an improvement. Spoilers for how we're probably going to review this one. What do you make of the Gold Coast United, both their time in the A-League and their logo that they wore throughout that period?
Yeah, probably preferred their kits to their actual logo, to be honest. I thought their kit colours with the blue, the gold shirt and the blue shorts, I think was quite an iconic combination. I think it's just a pity that their logo is so 2-bit. I don't know. I definitely think that their current logo in the NPL form is a massive, even though it's sort of based on this logo, it's a massive improvement. I mean, I wouldn't say this is a terrible logo by any means. Obviously, if you're talking about representation, I think it definitely represents Gold Coast as well as it can. But yeah, I think the drawing's a bit simple. The font's nice, I guess. So I guess I'm a bit torn. Where do you think it should be decent or needs improvement? Because I'm almost on the fence with this one.
Well, I think Topper needs improvement because I think, as you've noted, as I've noted, and this is like, again, we shouldn't be talking about it, but we always go too far into future spoilers. The logo they've got now is much better. It's much cleaner. It's much more, I think, identifiable with that region. So now that we have the benefit of knowing how good a Gold Coast logo can be and how nice having that, silhouette of the beach and the coastline along there is, I think this goes top and needs improvement because the club themselves could have quite easily, I think, just taken this logo and ran with it in an NPL level, but instead they looked at it and said, this is something that we can now improve to identify better with the region. So I think top and needs improvement is fair. But again, it's not a hideous logo or anything, like some of the other ones that we'll probably throw in the bin, but yeah, not the greatest and not the most inventive one in the world. So jumping forward to a logo that seems to be trapped somewhat in time. This is the FFA Centre of Excellence logo, sometimes also referred to as the AIS. They play in the National Youth League competition and have all the way through. I don't actually know if they're still using this logo or if they got given an updated brand to match the replacement of the Australian logo. There isn't much information about them because they are so closely affiliated with the AIS. Do you have any inputs relating to the Centre of Excellence, how it participates in the Youth League, and then where do you think we would throw this particular graphic? I kind of think, just spoilers, that it sits towards needs improvement alongside all the other, round ball, Southern Star logos that we had in that 2018 period. But what are some of your thoughts?
Yeah, I think obviously the AIS program, I think, discontinued not long ago. It may well mean that they might still be using this in some way from that that department of FFA. I'm not too sure, but the stars are a bit distracting. I think the different size stars around it's an oddly structured logo, and it's probably a bit of a head scratcher. The font is a bit strange and not terrible again. But it is a bit of a sign of that old brand of FFA that probably just it all needed that improvement across the board. So yeah, for that reason, I think it'd be surprising if they did still use it, because I couldn't quite find anything online when I was having a look. But it's not terrible, not in the bin, but I think there will be a lot worse than it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think bottom of needs improvement is the highest that we could possibly put it. But again, I'd echo your sentiment. I don't think it's that horrific and that much of an eyesore that it needs to jump in that bin category. I think we reserve getting in the bin for the worst of the worst, and a few more that will come up as we talk through. The next one, and there's two that are in quick succession, so I'm going to bring them up here, is the Canberra United logo. Obviously, Canberra United have been involved in the W League for quite a while. They used this particular logo from 2008, their inauguration in the W League in that first season through to 2018. In 2018, they upgraded to a very similar logo, but slight variation to the current one that you can see on screen. A little bit of a change to incorporate more green, to bring the Canberra United and the picture of their logo within the shield. First, we'll go to the older version. What are some of your thoughts, or what are some of your experiences with Canberra United as far as the W League is concerned? And then also, where do you think these logos potentially sit?
Yeah, well, they've had a lot of different shades of green on their kits over the years. Pretty much almost every color of that part of the rainbow, really. And I think when you look at the two different logos, they're both very similar. And obviously they've got that predominant lime green in the old logo that's a lot more prominent, whereas there's those two shades of green that are quite different in the new one. So for that reason, I probably prefer the old one, because it's a little bit more consistent with that lime green, or at least the last season kit that they have worn. But I guess it is much of a muchness that they would have to go side by side wherever you put them in the tier list. And I think they're probably decent, because I think the font's nice. The Parliament House in the logo is quite cool, and I just think that it is a little bit of a shame in the new logo. And they try to squish everything into the badge, which I'm not neither here nor there. But I think it is a bit of a shame that they sort of added that extra green. I'm not really sure what the thinking was there, but I guess it is just a minor detail, really.
I hope they didn't pay a lot for this rebrand, because it's not anything revolutionary or interesting. I would have thought if a club's going to go to the effort of updating their badge and doing all their reprinting and all that sort of stuff, they might be a bit more aggressive in terms of the way that they changed. And maybe this will come up again when we talk about some of our upcoming A-League logos, which we're about to move into in a moment. But yeah, I thought, kind of a half measure. It's a weird rebrand. I don't necessarily think there was that big a differentiation between the two of them that they potentially needed it. I'm more than happy to put them. I think the bottom end are decent, because I think they've got kind of that clip art style, which we'll talk about a little bit through, where it's very much a time capsule of a different period. But yeah, I think it's fine. It's not offensive. I would think if, and we've spoken about this in previous tier lists over the previous weeks, if there is a Canberra team coming to the A-League in the future, I would expect that they have a full logo rebrand, and perhaps both clubs start to brand themselves in a similar manner with a new format to represent both the A-League and W League sides, and Youth League and all that other sort of great stuff as well. But we are going to jump into the first of our A-League logos, and I know it's one that's very near and dear to your heart, Michael. It is going to be Western United, of course, joining the competition last season. They pretty much started from scratch. Not a tremendous amount of identity for the Western region because it is such a broad space. There's way too much that you could try and fit into a singular logo. But it is supposed to be derivative of the Westgate Bridge, a couple of the skyline buildings in and around the western suburbs of Melbourne itself. What were some of your thoughts, both as a Western United fan as for the league is concerned, when Western United joined the league? And what are some of your thoughts as to how this logo represents them in and around the league as well?
It's been funny because I've been obviously watching the podcast as all of the reserve team people should be. And every time there's a comment that you or Branson have made about Western United saying it takes too long to drive from Tane to Geelong, sort of there's something my soccer Twitter in a rage comes out, but I've kept it to myself, and I can put my bias aside a little bit, and I do think it is up there with the best logos. Really, even taking off my supporter hat. I think we mentioned at the very start the ability to switch the colours around and blend it in with whatever kit is being worn, be it the home or the away or the goalkeeper kits. I think really makes it a really fresh professional look. They're not the only club to do it, but I guess because in world football, so many club logos are well established in Europe, it's probably not something that happens a whole lot. And I guess it is great to sort of one of the one advantages of having a new franchise is, creating a bit of a fresh brand that hopefully will be quite, popular. But yeah, no, I have it quite high, either in decent or in all-star. I do think the Fury logo is better, which is a sign that I am putting my bias aside. But again, I guess I am a bit of a sucker for green because it is, it is quite catching.
I'm going to put it in All-Star, but we're going to come back to it because there's something that I want to get your opinion on with the future logo that comes up. And I'm sure if you've been in and around Soccer Twitter over time, you know exactly what I'm about to talk about. But when we get to it, we'll talk through it. We might put them side by side and see what people think. The next one that we're going to jump into, and there's two that are going to look pretty much identical. The first one being Western Sydney Wanderers' inaugural badge. Came through, of course, in 2012, a very quickly thrown together A-League side to try and balance the league again after the folding of both North Queensland Fury and Gold Coast United, who we've already spoken about. They wore this logo through to 2015. What are some of your thoughts on this original Western Sydney Wanderers logo?
Well, for a club that was thrown together so quickly, they got so much right, didn't they? The branding was so classic. The stadium was fantastic, and obviously they had on-field success pretty quickly. So, I think everything's a tick for Wanderers, at least in their early years. I like the fact that the letters overlap. It's sort of not dissimilar to Carlton in the AFL. Obviously it's a unique brand. It's not copying anything directly, but yeah, I mean, if this isn't one of the best logos that we're going to talk about today, I'd be surprised. And we're about to have a look at the star as well, but it is iconic in one of the most iconic moments of Australian football history, which probably makes the newer logo better purely for that memory. It looks weird without the star. I don't know.
Okay, so you've given us the spoilers, but then the next one coming up is the star. So there is a long-standing tradition, and Brandon and I have had this conversation 50 times because he loves his kits as you do as well. That stars what they represent as far as club logos are concerned. Pretty much everywhere, and obviously this is European bias and stuff coming into it as well, it represents either league titles or quantities of 10 league titles for the bigger clubs, for the likes of Juventus, Bayern Munich, even some of the clubs in and around England as well, representing their league titles. There is two clubs that use the stars in their logos to represent in this instance, Asian Champions League triumph, or in Europe, European continental competition. Western Sydney Wanderers is one. Do you know who the other one is?
Oh, it wouldn't be the Oceania Club of the Century, would it?
It is not. It is Nottingham Forest. So I think Oceanic Club of the Century is a whole other podcast that we could get into, and I don't really want to hear too much from South Melbourne fans this week after last week. But the other club is Nottingham Forest, who won 2 European titles. They never won a top-flight division, right. But they have 2 red stars above their kit. Above their logo and their crest. There is a big part of me, and perhaps too cynical a part, that wants to put this in the bin, because I'm of the opinion that if you have stars on your kit, they should be representative of league titles. not well known in and around the A-League because I don't think it's well broadcast, but there's actually a silver star that goes above each of the A-League champions logos. Sydney FC have one that now has 5 inside that number. The number 5 inside that star. Brisbane has one that has 3, Melbourne Victory 4. All those clubs get a star for their A-League title wins, a silver star, that's not necessarily incorporated into the logo. So there's 2 elements. I think I would put this in the bin because the club shouldn't necessarily be incorporating the star into their own logo. It should be given to them by the league for their accomplishments. And then there's another part of me that says you don't get stars for European title wins. The one other club in the world that seems to validate the opinion for these Western Sydney fans is Nottingham Forest. But again, Nottingham Forest are a side that hasn't done particularly well over the last 20 to 25 years and are really harkening back to a time when they used to be great. My concern is, for Western Sydney fans, they should be focusing on how great they could be now rather than worrying too much about getting stars on their logo for how good they were in 2015. But I am more than happy to defer to you as our expert guest this week, Michael. Where do you think the star logo fits in comparison with the regular one?
Oh, look, I think you've made a compelling argument, but I guess we've got to all remember how it wasn't just a title win of some random tournament or trophy. You know, this team went against the odds and really earned that star, in my opinion. You know, it was real crazy Champions League with the amount of team, or the level of teams they had to get through to do that. I mean, I guess we're at opposite ends of the spectrum as to where we put them.
I should clarify though, like 100%, it's probably the biggest win of any A-League side, and the fact that they did it so early on in their journey as a club, like within 3 years of their first competitive fixture, is absolutely insane. Like, I'm not taking that before Western Sydney Wanderers fans and before Chrissy starts trying to beat me up in the Slack channel. You know, like, it is a fantastic achievement. I don't want to diminish the strength and the value of that competition win for them. It is absolutely immense and should be recognised, but does that mean they get to go and put a star on their own logo? No, I don't necessarily think that. I think stars represent, that's my opinion, that stars represent league titles. I would happily put this one wherever you think it sits within the channel. If you could make a case, for decent or needs improvement, like, absolutely fine. If you have a case to make for all-star, by all means, sell it to me.
I think we can meet halfway in the middle and put it maybe at maybe the top of needs improvement, because technically we're talking about something that it would need to improve on. But otherwise is an excellent logo. But I think we can meet in the middle and
I don't have too many more rants left in me. There's one coming up from MacArthur in the future, spoilers. But, you know, like, I just think, come on, like, just try and be consistent across the league. Try and be consistent across the division. If the other A-League titles are represented by stars above each team's crest, then just stay consistent with that and win more league titles so that you get a star of your own. But I don't know what's going to happen. If Western Sydney win, let's say that this season Carl Robertson hits the ground running, wins the league and wins the championship, are they going to have a silver star above their gold star? Is it going to be a logo that's, you know, way off center and way, you know, just a line of stars going up into the air like it's Super Mario or something like that? But it'll be interesting to see how this one plays out over time. But we are going to jump forward, hopefully, to more straightforward, easy ones. The Wellington Phoenix, their initial logo. Wellington, of course, scrambled and got themselves together very, very quickly with the folding of New Zealand Knights. They eventually leased and then purchased the license for that second New Zealand side. Coming into the league, of course, in 2007, they wore this logo for 10 seasons up until 2017 before their rebrand. Having a look at this logo and understanding kind of the journey I think they were on and being fair to the journey they were on at that particular time, where do you think this one sits?
I think it's probably a sign of a club that had bigger priorities, really. Again, as you rightly point out, the fact that they were thrown in pretty quickly is a sign that perhaps they had a big hill to climb. I guess looking at the logo itself, it doesn't really do anything for me. I've never really understood what it's going for. The font looks like it's from Hogwarts or Harry Potter of some description. I don't think it really is football club, esque. I don't know. I'm really... other than the colour scheme, because I think they've got great colours and they made it, you know, their kits have probably, with the exception of maybe their first 1 or 2 seasons, their kits have always been pretty decent. But I just think that they were definitely a club that needed to upgrade their logo pretty quickly. And I'd have this towards the bottom, but it is better than the Knights. I I guess I'd still probably have it at the top of Get in the Bin, because I just think it really is a bit of an eyesore.
That's exactly what I was going to suggest. Top of Get in the Bin. It's got a shield on there, some ribbon with writing on it, another shield on top of that. It's got the football on there, which I hate. That football is on fire. A phoenix is coming out of it. And I think what actually counts against this phoenix logo is how fantastic the next logo is that we're going to look at. So I think we put this at top of Get in the Bin, and maybe we come back at the end and have a look at, obviously understanding that the Phoenix were in a very unique situation, but it looks like it was drawn on a napkin, and it was just someone's doodle that they did in a particular afternoon to try and put together some concept art, and somehow it made its way all the way through. It's just very busy. There's a lot going on, but it does bring us to this very, very sharp looking logo. One of, I think, my favourite logos in the league, the Wellington Phoenix rebrand, which of course came on the advent of their 10th season, released before the 2017 year and currently in use. I really like this one. I'm going to just put that up front and early. What are some of your thoughts on this logo?
For some reason, it didn't click with me to start off with, but it's grown on me a lot. And you're absolutely right. It's right up there with some of the best in the league. I'm more than happy for any Kiwi viewers to correct us, but I believe the writing at the bottom means the bird will fly, which is a nice touch. The font's great. I love the FC being vertical there. It all works. It really works. It's fantastic. It corrects all the problems that the old logo had. It's definitely an all-star. Where in all-star, it's tough. Again, it sounds like you're wanting to put it at the very top. Yeah.
So what we can do as well is we can put stuff in all-star, and then maybe we have a further conversation at the end about the order of all-star as well. So maybe for the time being just now, we'll throw it at the top, but then maybe at the end, as we go through all of our all-star category, we see, is this one actually at the top, or how do we want to try and prioritise the numbers within that list as well? But I think all-stars where it sits, whether it sits at the top of that category or towards the bottom, we might talk through at the end. But I think it does everything we want to. I think it looks fantastic. So the beauty bit's covered. I think it represents Wellington better than the previous logo did, and the Phoenix representation there is very clear. It's also got the native tongue on there as well to help represent the New Zealand region. It's not just random generic stuff. Colour scheme's obviously fantastic. They made that change away from the stripe pattern a couple of years ago, and this now matches that, and I think it looks absolutely fantastic on their kits that they wear. They also do the same colour palette swap that you were speaking about with Western United. There is a black and white version that they used on away kits previously. There is an inverted colour version as well that they've used a few different times as well. But yeah, I think it's fantastic. I think it's one of the better ones in the league. Going from that relative high to something that's potentially a little bit more sign of the times. You'll notice with a lot of these original logos, particularly for these now foundation sides that we're going to be looking at, their 2005, 2006, 2004 logos, whatever it is, are very different to the ones that they're using today. And I think this one is one of those time capsule logos for Sydney FC that was very much representative of 2005 as a year, and I think that it comes through in a design. Again, another one similar to Wellington Phoenix, where we're perhaps a little bit spoiled by knowing what the next logo is that's coming. But what are some of your thoughts on the original Sydney FC logo? They did actually wear this one for quite a few seasons. They originally announced it in late 2004 as their bid was agreed in the league, and wore it up until 2017, so 13 full years in this one before introducing their current logo, which we'll talk about in a moment.
Yeah, look, I think it's definitely absolutely not Get in the Bin. I definitely think that even though it is a time capsule logo, it is certainly it ticks all the boxes it needs to tick. I think orange is a curious choice because I don't recall them ever having orange as part of their kits. But I think probably the bigger problem with it, really, if you look back at now, Sydney are known as the Sky Blues, and if you were to tell a random person on the street who knows nothing about the A-League, you show them this logo, and then you tell them their nickname is the Sky Blues, I think they'd laugh at you because it's not really sky blue. It's sort of lightish blue, and it's obviously got the faded colours where it's got that element to it. But yeah, it's probably more sort of royal blue or darker blue. So I don't know. It's definitely not it's a mediocre one. I'd almost liken it to the two Canberra ones that we spoke about because it is a bit cartoonish. It is a bit quick and thrown together, but it sort of does what it needs to do. It's just probably a little bit in the needs improvement just below those ones.
Yeah, I think they did have some orange accents to their early kits, like in that 2005, 2006, 2007 kind of era. But again, like they obviously dropped that very late on. It was amazing to me looking at this logo, realizing how long they actually had it and how long they used it. I would say, given that the club in real life went out and found, I think, a vast improvement, this job's pretty much done for us, and we put it in the needs improvement category alongside the other A-League logos, and then get talking about one of the sharper logos in the area if you think that's okay.
I think that's fair enough.
Perfect. So for the first time as well, Michael, we're making history. We've got a 2-tier league or 2-level league. So we're going to just make a quick adjustment. Magic of editing. We'll jump forward to that now. All right, there we go, Michael. We've got enough space now to keep jamming stuff in that needs improvement category if we absolutely need to. But it does bring us up to our next logo as well, which is the current Sydney FC logo. Now, full disclosure, I quite like this one. There were a couple of different brand versions that came out around the time that Sydney FC looked to start rebranding their logo. Some of them were good, some of them were a little bit weird, a little bit iffy. This is the final logo that they went with. They've been wearing it since 2017. It's obviously got the iconic Opera House there, which I think helps tie it to the local area incredibly well. As you've already mentioned, it's full of sky blue writing. It's got the additional navy accents, 2 different shades of sky blue. It's got the Federation Star in the bottom, which I think is a nice touch as well for Sydney as, you know, one of our inaugural cities. Whereabouts do you think this one sits, and what are some of your thoughts on the Sydney logo at present?
It goes without saying, I don't think there'd be a single person that would say this isn't a significant improvement on the original logo. I think it's excellent. Obviously, not the only club that has incorporated the Opera House into their logo, and from what I understand, there's a bit of a fee to pay in order to have that privilege. And I think the other day we saw the Swans have phased that out of their new logo, the AFL team. But this one, maybe I'm being a bit nitpicky, but is this not the old Premier League font? This always distracts me that it is very similar to the old Barclays Premier League font, and I don't know whether or not that takes it down at all. And certainly I'm not trying to find reasons to, but I don't know. And it is a little distracting for me that it's awfully similar.
Okay, well, magic of editing, we can actually find out. So Premier League logo. I tell you what, you're not wrong. Like, that is very, very similar. Like, if we even put those two logos together, that is... I don't think they're identical, but I can definitely
No, they're not identical.
I can definitely see where the comparison comes from, particularly because it's in navy blue. You know, like they are both very similar color palettes in the way that it's presented. It's not 100% close, or it's not 100% it, but yeah, I can definitely see where the comparison comes from for sure. Look, I still think this goes in all-star category, if I'm being completely honest, but if you think it's more towards the top end of decent, I will happily go along with that. I won't argue too much for it.
I think it's getting to the point where I know you said before, we're not going to have that many all-star logos. I don't think this disqualifies it from that category. I still think it is definitely an elite category, and maybe there might be people out there who haven't made that same similarity that I have, and I'm sorry for making you now no longer be able to unsee that, but definitely it's an elite logo. It really is, and obviously it's a lot more representative of the club's colours. I think we've just proven that they're not going to get a lawsuit their way. I think the E was slightly different. But other than that, I think, it's definitely an all-star logo.
Yeah, we'll put it at the bottom of All-Star and we'll go back and we'll review them at the end and see how we go. So from one very strong logo to, I think, potentially one of the weaker ones in the bunch, by all means, future spoilers for anyone that's watching along with us. This is the original Perth Glory logo. Now, they actually used this logo in the old NSL, and it was their bid logo in the 2004 era. So they didn't actually use this one in any competitive fixtures. I think it may have been printed up on a couple of preseason friendly fixtures in late 2004, early kind of 2005 period. There was a preseason cup that I think this made a few appearances in. They used this from, I think, 1996 through to 2004, so an 8-year period during their time in the NSL. Do you have any memories of Perth in and around this time, and what are some of your thoughts on this logo looking at it?
Yeah, well, much like the New Zealand Knights discussion, this definitely predates my knowledge of them. But look, the NSL was where they had this logo for the most part. It's a dud. It really is a dud. Obviously, the one thing I do love about Perth is There's not really that many. I think Phoenix Suns might be the only other club in world sport that have purple and orange. It's a great combination of colours. There might be some other club out there, but it's probably the only thing really I can say that's positive about. Otherwise, we talked about the soccer ball being in the logo. The font is just very, very odd, and really not a fan.
If you were to ask me what year this logo was from, I'd assume it's from the 80s, not 1996. So I don't, if it looks outdated at that point, and obviously, we're no historians or experts, but it looks a bit chintzy, and it kind of goes into the next one, which is the logo that they actually brought in for the A-League, which they used from 2005 to 2009, which is on your screen now, which, to be honest, I don't look at it being that different or being that specific. We talk about, these clip art logos where it seems to just be a random collection of images in a random order. I think this one goes into the same category. It was mind-boggling to me looking at this, thinking that they wore this for 4 seasons of the A-League, because I couldn't really remember it at all. I had to go back and find, match photos from the first 4 years of the league to actually find it on a kit. I think this is potentially the first club that we've seen go back-to-back in the bin. What do you think?
It goes in the bin. But I guess for me it is a slight improvement, only purely because of nostalgia. Because around this time, maybe I'm not looking at it objectively, but this is when I discovered the A-League, and I think the very first year, it might have been 2006, FIFA 06, that the A-League was on FIFA, and this was the Perth logo at the time, and it's very eye-catching, but for all the wrong reasons. I do think it is a slight improvement on their NSL era logo, but it's hard to say anything nice about it, honestly. I definitely think it's a head scratcher.
Yeah, I mean, don't ever apologise for nostalgia, because nostalgia fuels 90% of the content on this channel, so it pretty much drives the car that we're all sitting in at the moment, so that nostalgia is absolutely fine. We jump forward to their current logo, released in 2009. I'm going to be completely honest with you, again, it's got a giant bloody football in the middle of it. I think maybe if it was just the sun, or if it maybe was just the glory piece, I'd enjoy it quite a bit more. It's got silver and grey accents, which really haven't ever been incorporated into a Perth Glory kit. It's always purple, it's always white, it's always predominantly orange accents. What are some of your thoughts on this logo in particular?
With pointy stars. All of their logos have had these weird sort of... this one more so, really. I guess it looks... I brought up a really high-quality version of it. Wikipedia, I think it might have been. And you look at it up close, and it looks really fresh. The font's really nice. Silver's a weird choice, but not a bad choice. So it's by far an improvement. But it is really generic. I mean, we talked about the Fury and how they sort of managed to get that generic, not really sure how to graphically represent what the club is, but at least they made it work. I think this is probably an example where you can replace Glory for pretty much anything, and it doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, it's just a logo with purple, orange, and silver in it.
I think it's the best of the three that they've had, but I know the image that you're talking about. There's a glossy version that's got a bit more shine on it, and then there's this version, which is their printed kit version and the one off their website. I would put this alongside Sydney FC as a needs improvement one. It's the best that we've seen from Perth, but again, I don't think it's on the level of some of the sharper images that we kind of got ahead of it in the tier list. Do you have any case to try and put this one any higher?
Not really. Yeah, I think it definitely belongs there. I think they've had that many. They've already had 3 logos in the space of 16, 17 years, which is probably more than most other clubs. But I wouldn't be surprised if they do bring out something new very soon, because it was 2009, I think you said before, that they brought this in. So it has been a while. Maybe they will be doing a rebrand.
Maybe it's just one of those. It wouldn't surprise me if this is something that Tony Sage himself designed, and that's why their logos are always so weird and strange, because that's one of those weird idiosyncrasies that he seems to have as a person. The next one that we're going to jump towards is a little bit... This one's a weird one, right? So I went through and had a look at Newcastle Jets history. Of course, Newcastle United Jets actually inaugurated in 2000. They were one of the clubs invited into the Premier League from the old NSL era. I couldn't find anything that predated this logo. So I think, and I'm happy to be corrected, I'm happy for anyone in and around the Newcastle area to correct me in the comment section below. I think this is the logo that they've had since the year 2000, which, if that is the case, and this logo is now 20 years old, it has aged tremendously well. Do you have any insights into the history of the Jets logos, and what are some of your thoughts on this one?
I definitely think they had a previous logo, but there's really not much information about it. I saw a few blurry images of some of the, I guess, NSL era games, and it definitely was a different logo that I could see on there. It may have been another one like Perth, where they brought in a new logo for the commencement of the A-League, but again, like you, I don't have any evidence to support that.
Yeah, so they actually did. This was the logo that they used in 2005. Definitely, there was Newcastle United. There were a couple of different Newcastle sides in and around the NSL during that 90s period, and there are a few logos relating to that. Perhaps Newcastle historians, if they're available, if you can let us know either on Twitter or in the comment section below how the different Newcastle clubs integrated. I think there might have been a couple of changes and adjustments to what was available, and I think this is the one that became the Newcastle United Jets once a few of those different sides in and around the Hunter region actually merged into one. But, you know, like, even if it is from 2005, I still think it has aged probably the best of the original logos that we've seen in that group. It doesn't seem to really have any massive issues. It doesn't seem to look particularly out of date. I don't know where I'd put it, to be completely honest. There's a couple of issues with it. I think the gold is probably not represented enough in their kits, but that's a whole other conversation. And I think the fact that the Jets portion is the largest writing on it is also a little bit strange. I would have thought Newcastle would be the biggest portion, or the portion that they'd be trying to, you know, promote the most as far as their crest is concerned. But otherwise, like, it's clear, it's in their colour brand, it's in their colour scheme. It represents the area with the Air Force bases in and around the Newcastle area. Where do you think we would position Newcastle as far as this list is concerned?
I think the point on it aging well is very correct. Does anyone still call them Newcastle United Jets? Because I feel like that's a bit of the only outdated thing about this. That maybe I think they're still technically called that, but I don't think they're ever referred to as such because of the Premier League team, obviously. I think it's decent though. You know, I think somehow it has held up. It goes somewhere in decent. Again, we can probably do the ordering later, but I had it as definitely above average, which obviously is surprising. But again, it's hard to really pick anything out about it that's terrible, to be honest. I think definitely it stood the test of time quite well.
Yeah, I think top are decent for now, and we'll go back and redo some of the branding. I think a case could be made for like W League, E League, A League being ahead of it. You could potentially make a case that the Australian logos are a little bit stronger. But for the time being, top are decent because most of the A-League clubs are sitting at the top of their particular groups at the moment. They are the only club as well that has had one logo all the way through. Everybody else has had some different variation, some different format, including our next one, Melbourne Victory. This is their original logo, announced in 2005 on the advent of the league once they were announced as the Victorian representative and the Melbourne team. They still use this logo today in present. Obviously, you know, yourself being a Western United fan, myself being a Melbourne City fan, there is an inherent bias that we have to acknowledge. I'll let you go first. What are some of your thoughts on the Melbourne Victory logo?
Look, there might be some photos that people might dig up on Twitter at some stage with me wearing this logo. So, you know, that was a time where I didn't know any better. No, look, I think it is an iconic logo, whether you love them or you hate them, or you're conflicted like myself. I think it is an iconic logo, but really it could do with a revamp. You know, as much as the V's iconic, and obviously the colour scheme's iconic. The fact they haven't really changed it at all. Probably it can still remain to be some sort of shield. And maybe I am clutching at straws here, but I think the font, there's something about the font that just doesn't really, obviously it's a unique club name. There's no one who in the world who calls themselves the Victory, but I think the logo could do with a bit of a modernisation. It's still probably decent, but I think it seems to be a little bit time capsule-y. I don't know if you agree with that. It might be a bit of a controversial take, but I think it's either decent or at the top of needs improvement.
Look, I I think that this one is probably the toughest one. I think that it makes cases for three different categories. I think there's a case that could be made if you presented stuff in a particular way for in the bin, like it, because I think, like you, that it does need improvement, it does need an upgrade. So in that extent, it represents a bygone era. I think Time Capsule hits the nail on the head 100%. If you were to show this to 10 people who've never seen an A-League game before and ask what year this was made, I think they'd all say mid-2000s. It just looks like that. The different fonts involved, the different capitalization and lowercase lettering is just weird to me that they haven't got that consistency. Like Victory, why does it drop to lowercase? Why is Melbourne all in caps? The FC, like, you know, where does that kind of come into it? The only thing that I would have been very critical of is it doesn't have a soccer ball, so it probably deserves a little bit of credit for that. It does represent the V, which has been a signature of Melbourne Victory's kits in every A-League season since I think 2007 was when they first incorporated it into the kit.
So.
But like, again, it's just it's generic. This is like, if you've ever played Pro Evolution Soccer, there aren't licensed teams, so they've just got random generic logos, random generic kits. If you downloaded like one of those manage your own team apps from the App Store, there was a football game that had no licensed product, this is the sort of logo that I would expect to see in that, where it is just random, generic, whatever. And yes, we know that, you know, navy is the state colour of Victoria. We know that, you know, the big V is a big archetype of perhaps maybe the AFL competition, a little bit closer than any other Victorian competition. So there are little things that hark back to the particular region itself, but I don't think we could put this any higher than needs improvement. I think it goes alongside Perth Glory and it goes alongside that Sydney FC logo from 2005. I think a club as big as Melbourne Victory, by all means, use this same template. You don't have to revolutionise it too much, but you've got so much history that could be incorporated. There's so much more about Melbourne and Victoria as an area that could be here. I think it's due for an update.
Oh, 100%. 100% it is. And I think somewhere amongst those four club logos we've got there, it needs improvement.
Just to stop the Victory fans screaming at us too loudly in the comment section, we'll put it at the top, it needs improvement, because I think even there would be perhaps more level-headed Victory fans that would agree that, you know, they need some sort of update. I think if you look at the top tier logos, they're all a bit more unique. They're all a bit more cultural in terms of trying to create a unique club identity for that particular group. And I think Victory's is very much just kind of a little bit generic as far as it's concerned. So let's throw it in needs improvement for now. We might review it at the end and see if we think it goes up any further. Jumping across to another Melbourne Victory logo. This is the one time that they've made a change and an amendment. This is for their 10-year anniversary. No, your eyes don't deceive you. It says 2005 to 2014, which, if you count on your fingers and include 2005, is technically 10 years. We'll compare this with another 10-year anniversary logo in a moment, but this change is a negative change as far as I'm concerned. Again, it just looks like they took the previous logo, made it a little bit more contrasted, a little bit darker. They expanded the Melbourne writing on it. They added the 10, of course. They put that random loop around it, which looks like one of those kind of plastic Livestrong armbands that everybody wore in the late 2000s period. What are some of your thoughts on this 10-year logo?
Gosh, that's a great shout, by the way. But the paste of the 10-year bit over the best part of the logo.
Yeah.
The one the other logo had going for it. I mean, they've made it darker, which is probably a bit more closely aligned with what their actual kit colours look like these days. But yeah, I can't see this being higher. Obviously, it was only used for one season. The execution is really off.
It got printed on a kit, so we have to include it. But I think this goes in the bin. I think this is, well, as much as we're saying that Melbourne Victory needs to update their regular logo, like, this is not a step in the right direction as far as that update is concerned. And it wasn't that long ago, 2014. Like, it wasn't years and years and years ago that this came out. And if you looked at it and said this was from the 70s, again, I'd be like, yeah, makes sense. 70s, 80s, that sort of era. So I think we throw this one in the bin and hope that any graphic designers watching, anyone that potentially gets contract work for Melbourne Victory, learns from the mistakes of that particular period. Now, this does, and I have to acknowledge this before I click the next button, Michael, I'm going to have to hand over to you for the next one, because this logo resonates with me quite deeply, and I don't feel I can provide an unbiased opinion for it. But it is the original Melbourne Heart logo. Of course, Melbourne Heart joining the competition as the second Melbourne side, coming in 2008. They wore this logo till 2014 when they were purchased by the City Football Group and rebranded as Melbourne City. The interesting part, and why I wanted to kind of keep this one alongside the Western United logo, is a case can be made that the Western United logo and the Melbourne Heart logos are very similar. If you flip the Melbourne Heart logo upside down, it creates pretty much the exact same W that Western United have, representing their particular area. It's the same kind of like cuts in the logo itself. It's the same sort of width. It's the same sort of dimensions. I think this logo is fantastic. I love that it gets the M and the H in there. I think it captures the colour scheme well. I think the overall silhouette being a heart was fantastic, but I'm biased, so I'm going to let you place this one wherever on the board you think it goes as far as the old heart logo is concerned.
I think definitely that I think almost exactly what you just said was my notes, and I've never supported them. I've definitely very rarely wanted them to ever win. But definitely they won in terms of graphic design right from the start. The M and the H sort of optical illusion is terrific. The color works well, the heart works well, the font is brilliant, and I don't think it's almost identical to what they ended up with City anyway. But spoiler alert, but absolutely elite, absolutely in the top category of what we've got so far. I actually think it would probably be slightly better than the Western United logo. I know the similarities are there, but obviously, if Heart was still a club now and you ignored their identity at the moment, this would still be well and truly an above-average logo even now in 2020. So, yeah, absolutely rate it.
Yeah, I think the one criticism that you could potentially give it, and it probably falls in the Melbourne Victory category and the Western United category, is that there isn't really the way that, and obviously they have iconic images, but like the way Wellington incorporates the Phoenix into their logo, the way Sydney FC incorporates the Opera House into their logo, some of the other ones that we're going to talk about as well, calling on those key state colours and those key state and city representations. I think maybe a case could be made that they don't do enough to differentiate themselves to certain areas within Melbourne, but that's probably a whole other podcast topic. I think that's probably the one criticism we could level at it. If our logo wins, that's fantastic. We didn't do a whole lot of winning on the pitch wearing this particular badge, so if we can at least win the off the pitch fashion stakes, then I think that works out quite nicely for us as well. But let's throw it into All-Star at the moment. I think we'll go through All-Star. I think there's a couple that potentially could be moved up and down based on the strength of the other candidates, one of which that we're going to look at now is the Melbourne City logo. Of course, as already mentioned, City Football Group took over Melbourne City in 2014. During that off-season, they also rebranded to incorporate the Melbourne City logo. There's a lot of different stuff on here. I don't know how your immediate thoughts and impressions of it go. This is, I think, a logo that's got way too much going on. Obviously, I just said, and this is going to be a hypocritical answer from me, that more teams need to do more to try and tie themselves to the local area, but there's ways to do that and there's ways to go about it. I don't think many people from in and around Melbourne and Victoria could tell you the four animals or the four icons on the Victorian flag. I don't think too many people know about the Victoria Cross. I don't think too many people know about Queen Victoria's crown that sits atop the Victorian version of the Australian flag. Yes, it incorporates the blue or the city blue of Melbourne City. The yellows kind of come out of nowhere. It's got a sheep, a cow, a whale, a boat on it. There's way too much going on in this logo as far as I'm concerned. I don't think it's getting the bin. I think it needs improvement category, but I think this is way too busy and way too much.
Interesting to hear. That's really interesting, genuinely interesting to hear that from you. I guess, I should probably clarify, it's not a bad logo. Like, it's similar to the way that we talk about Gold Coast United's logo and Sydney FC's logo and Perth and Victory. They're not bad logos by any stretch. Like, I don't look at it and roll my eyes and think this is shit to wear. I don't think it's necessarily representative of football in the country, and I don't think it's necessarily representative of really Melbourne as a whole. Like, there's a bunch of wonderful things about Melbourne that you could represent on a logo, and I don't necessarily think this is one of them. But again, I'm happy to be swayed either way. I think this is top of needs improvement, but wherever you want to sit it is absolutely fine with me. Yeah, look, the main comment I'd make, definitely they've gone for the clever Melbourne coat of arms sort of depiction there. I think the one thing that really made it work for me in terms of the fact that the club got bought out, I think there was a concern at the time that they just become a generic Manchester City carbon copy. And I think with this logo, they've made sure that they're not that. Obviously, I totally understand they wear the same colours and the kit's very similar, but I think it is unique in its own way. And I don't know. I love all the little details, but it definitely is it is very busy, and I definitely agree. It's probably the complete opposite of the victory, ironically, as far as it just has so much happening. It was definitely well focus grouped. You could tell.
Yeah, maybe we should put them side by side, actually. So this is actually the Manchester City logo that came out at around the same time. So you can kind of see there are certain similarities with the way that they're put together, like that additional yellow flourish. I wouldn't have hated it if it followed a similar pattern and incorporated a little bit more white, which was, if you remember the original Melbourne City kits, we wore white in the league. I don't think, like a little splash of red here or there would have been nice to associate with it. I wouldn't have minded if it followed a similar template. New York City's is also very similar. I think they could have taken the same items, like the boat and the whale, the goat, the cow, whatever else, and incorporated them just in a little bit different a style. I think it's too many of different things. It's halved and corded, and it's circle, and it's a badge, and it's a shield. It just seems way too busy to me. I don't think we could put it potentially above needs improvement. Do you think that's the right spot to be sitting it in?
Look, we probably disagree a little bit on that, but I think, yeah, I guess I liked it just because of how clean and sharp it is. But it definitely, you have to look at it. It's definitely not a logo that you just sort of walk past, because it's so busy. You almost have to get a microscope to analyze every detail of it. Yeah, I guess you have convinced me that it's probably not as good as I initially thought it was, and that definitely the heart logo is way superior. But yeah, I guess we are going to do a bit of maneuvering around with a lot of this as we go through it.
Yeah, let's drop it in decent. We've only got a couple more logos to go, and then I think maybe once they're on the board, I'll put it in decent for now. I'm going to shift Canberra down, and we'll talk about that further a little bit in a moment as well. But there's a couple more to get on the board. Maybe once they're all on the board, we can go through and see which ones stand out at us as perhaps needing to move up or needing to move down, and maybe we can talk through some of those options then as well. Because again, we're not the experts. We're just going on our gut feelings and our preferences at the moment, which is a good way to do it, but it does, I think, draw some interesting discussions. The next one, MacArthur FC. Now, I have to give a shout out to Brand because he'll freak out in the comment section below if I don't. Again, this one's got 3 stars included. Yes, they are Federation stars, which means they incorporate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different tiers. So it's not like the 5 stars that would go on a logo for a football club that has won. If this was in Europe, they would assume that this club has won 30 divisional titles when they haven't. Stars don't really have a place on logos unless they incorporate something. Yes, Western Sydney, I know I went on that rant earlier. You don't have to remind me. Otherwise, I don't think it's bad. I think it does an okay job. I think they're definitely trying to get that MacArthur Bulls branding out there as quickly as possible. It does represent the MacArthur region and the colours, the gold, the black and the white for that area in and around Sydney itself. When this logo was announced, when you heard about the MacArthur name and the Bull branding, what were some of your thoughts seeing this logo initially?
Yeah, I think I really found it quite funny and reassuring that Branson went on that rant about it, and found it quite funny, but for completely different reasons. I definitely admit that definitely, you've convinced me in terms of stars needs to be deserving. I at least think the Wanderers deserve their star a little bit more than MacArthur just deciding we'll count the number of, associations, whatever it is. I'd just like to point out that obviously they've gone, I think it is definitely intentional that they've gone for it to look like the Bulls blowing out smoke, because that's where the stars are located. My question is why? What does that, that actually doesn't, other than the stars, if you took the stars out of it, I'd have it in elite, quite frankly, because I love the font. I really think that the colour scheme works well. We've seen their kits, and in my kit article on the reserve team, I sort of criticised the simplicity of the actual kits themselves. But if it wasn't for these stars, I think it'd be definitely a much nicer logo.
We criticise Melbourne Cities for being too busy and having too much going on. I think there is a lot of negative space on this logo, and maybe some of that is coming across because I put the logo on a white background, so it looks like there's a lot more white on the page than potentially there actually is. I would have liked to see maybe more of like a V shape for the logo to try and cut into the sides of the bull a little bit, or to make the bull a little bit wider to try and fill some of that space. I think again, this is for like graphic design experts, and by all means, any designers, if graphic design is your passion, let us know in the comment section. I think there is a lot of space on this badge where nothing's actually there and nothing's happening. So, maybe they could have incorporated additional stuff. Maybe the stars could have been either side of the bull. Maybe they could have put the date of their foundation down the bottom. Maybe the horns could have gone either side of the MacArthur wording to try and fill the space a little bit more. I think spatially there's something just a little bit off about it. I don't hate it. Like, I don't look at it and roll my eyes and think that's disgusting. But I don't look at it and think that is sharp, that's clean, that's as good as the elite tier. So I think maybe top of decent is where we'll sit it for now, alongside the other A-League colleagues, and maybe we'll have a closer chat about Newcastle and Melbourne City and MacArthur and where it sits. Do you think that's a fair spot to drop it for the moment?
Somewhere along that decent list, I think, yeah.
Right, takes us to our next one. From one of the newer clubs in the league to one of the older clubs in the league, Central Coast Mariners. This was, again, one of the couple of clubs that's still using their original logo from in and around the foundation. They, of course, were one of the foundation clubs, the regional club in the league in 2005. It does incorporate their colour scheme. It's got the yellow and the kind of lighter shade of blue. They're more of a navy blue now, which is a little bit of a variation to where they originally started. Again, it's got the soccer ball on it, which means it's got a ceiling for me. But what are some of your thoughts on the Mariners logo, of course, still in use today?
Yeah, well, it is a little bit of a theme, isn't it, with logos that came up at the start of the A-League. Time capsule really is the quickest way to summarise this one. Definitely in need of a modern version. I think the pieces are there. I'm not really sure why they decided that the M and the S and to a lesser extent the R could look good being so stretched like that and around the circle. That's it's quite distracting, and I think probably could have made better use, I guess, of that font. Really is my main criticism, but in general, definitely a modern look would be needed.
I think we throw it alongside Melbourne Victory in the needs improvement category, because I think they're both in a similar category where they're starting to look dated, they're starting to look old-fashioned, and I know Central Coast have got their own issues relating to how they're currently being operated on and off the pitch that they need to kind of rectify a little bit. But there's so much great about the Central Coast area. There's so much iconic about their stadium and their history throughout the league that there are things that I think they could incorporate better. I think the wave is cool. I understand what they went for and why it was there. But, try and get some of the palm trees on there. Try and get the silhouette of the sauce bottles. Try and get all those things that make Central Coast Mariners unique and great that they bring to the league. I think there's a lot more. This, again, is in that Melbourne Victory format. It's very generic when there is a lot very unique about that particular club and about that region of the world. So I think needs improvement's a good category for it to go in. And hopefully with time, as they look at it a little bit further, they start thinking, maybe we do need a bit of a refresh and a bit of an update to try and refresh the club and try and get some new energy about it as well. We do jump forward to another Central Coast Mariners logo, their 10-year anniversary logo. This one, I don't know how I feel about this. You mentioned the font. I think the font is much improved in this with the flatter Central Coast Mariners reading. I think it looks quite nice. It's not incorporated into the circle. But again, the 10 is weird. Why the 0 is bigger, I'm not entirely sure. They've done their 10 years right, 2004 to 2014. A little bit of a variation to Victory. But again, I think this goes in the bin as something that perhaps wasn't necessarily needed. If you're going to do a 10-year logo, maybe that's the ideal time to go and do that rebrand and refresh. We've seen it for a couple of the other sides in the league themselves. Wellington, 10-year anniversary, they redid their logo. Sydney was a little bit longer. And a few of the other A-League logos and stuff were rebranded around that similar timeline. Where do you think this 10-year anniversary one sits?
Yeah, 10-year logos are hard to judge. And definitely the positive of it is that the text does look a bit nicer. Without being contorted around that circle. But I just feel like they were just piling on ideas and ended up with something that was, a bit of a monster of, obviously there's multiple fonts, 4 fonts being used, I think.
Yeah, it looks like they kind of forgot to put the years on there, and someone was like, I'll just throw them on the side, so it'll be fine. So I think in the interest of fairness, maybe we throw it alongside the Melbourne Victory 10-year logo. And the only reason they're really on this list is that they got printed on a kit. I know Adelaide had a 10-year logo, but I don't think they actually, used it in practice, if that makes sense. I think it was just commemorative rather than anything else. So I think, interest of fairness, we've thrown Mariners and Victory in the needs improvement category together. Let's throw the 10-year logos for both clubs in the get in the bid category right next to each other as well. I think that's good balance for both of their groups. We now jump a little bit further north. This is the original Queensland Raw logo. Now, I'm going to show you two at the same time here, Michael, because they are very, very similar. Queensland Raw, of course, was the Queensland representative in the A-League. They maintained that name from 2005 to 2009. It was only with the addition of the Gold Coast United and North Queensland Fury sides that they dropped the Queensland from their title, where they took this logo, Brisbane Raw. They changed some of the logo's colouring to incorporate more of an orange or a darker tone of orange, more in line with, their history in the A-League, some of the colours that they've been using throughout that period. It's effectively the same logo. It's just a slight colour palette variation. It's a changing to the word. Where do you think these ones sit as far as the Queensland and Brisbane Raw logos are concerned?
I'm really sitting on the fence with these ones. I guess it is probably positive nostalgia. Again, I've never thought highly of the Raw, but whenever I think of this logo, and whenever I see the words Queensland and Raw next to each other, I think of a very young Matt Mackay with his shorts tucked up to his belly button with this logo on it. So I guess that's positive, decent, classification. But again, it's pretty thrown together, I think. Again, soccer ball brings it down. The font is nice. I don't know. I think you can make a case for it being in indecent or in needs improvement either way.
Maybe the best way we can put this one is because we know we have the benefit of foresight and knowing what's coming. So I think maybe this sits in the needs improvement category because it actually follows the next logo that we're going to look at, the current Brisbane Raw logo. So knowing that we have this one coming up, and spoilers for a moment when we go through it, I think this is a big improvement on what they had previously. Maybe we drop those two in the needs improvement category and then go on to talk about their current logo and the current one that's in use, if you think that sounds fair. All right, we'll throw them in, and I'm going to put Brisbane just ahead of Queensland because they never should have been named Queensland Raw at any point. They were the only club named after a state in the A-League itself, unless Tasmania United joins, and then I'll take back all those words that I've just said. But looking now at the current Brisbane Raw logo, it's a little bit divisive in and around the league itself. I'll be completely upfront with you. I quite like it. I think it took me a little while to actually start to enjoy it a little bit, but it's unique. They've tried something different. Have they nailed it? I'm not entirely sure, but again, if you showed me this logo and said it was from a Dutch team from the 1950s, I'd believe you. I think it's got strong football lineage, strong football history, and again, I think it's unique to the league. I don't think there's any other logo that's branded in this particular style or this particular format. What do you think and feel about it? Where do you think it would sit on our list?
I definitely think that it's far from the perfect football logo, but I think it is so unique. It could almost pass, if you change the name, pass as a logo for like a hipster burger bar or something in a suburbs. And I think that's probably what's divided people a lot. That it probably isn't as classic or as standard looking for football when you look around the world. But yeah, obviously that they incorporate the orange a lot more prominently here. I think that's a positive. I think definitely it has to be at least decent because it definitely achieves that improvement that was needed.
I'd make a case for All-Star. I think it's growing on me. And let me put it this way. Like, if Brisbane had won more with this logo, I think it'd probably be better received. I think potentially because of the time it came out, it's representative of the Bakrie ownership group and it's representative of arguably Brisbane's lowest point in terms of their on-field performance in the history of the league. So I think that kind of gets tied to it. The logo itself, I think it does a better job of differentiating them. Like, you put it alongside these Sydney FC logos and these Western Sydney logos and the Wellington logo, it's very different from all of them. So they are cultivating their own style. They are separating themselves a little bit as well. Potentially even like Western United, Melbourne Heart, while they are good logos, they are very similar. They follow a very similar structure and pattern. Whereas I think some of the better ones in the league, they differentiate themselves entirely from everything else in the division. And by all means, fans of clubs that we've put in the decent or needs improvement category for that, let me know. Like, I shit all over Melbourne City's logo because it was too different, and Newcastle Jets for being timeless but not super unique, and MacArthur's for being perhaps not unique enough. I think Brisbane goes into all-star category, but again, maybe we talk about them at the end and maybe try and turn this all-star category into like a real elite list for the time being. But that does bring us to our last club that we're adding. They've got two logos that we're going to look at. The first one, this is the Adelaide United FC logo used in the final season of the NSL itself. It was used as the bid logo. They did wear it on a couple of training kits, a couple of pre-season friendly kits in 2005 before the release of their logo. I think this one, Michael, falls straight into the needs improvement category. Again, because we've got the benefit of hindsight and benefit of foresight, knowing what is to come as far as Adelaide and United is concerned. Do you remember this logo at all? And do you have any thoughts and comments on how it looks?
Well, obviously, the one thing that really stands out is why it's such a wide and sort of short logo. It's pretty different for sort of football, I guess. That's probably why it can't really be any higher than needs improvement. Yeah, I think it lands somewhere there.
Yeah, I'd go along with that. And I think the reason that it's so easy to slide that one in is I think they actually did a good job of then finding their current logo, which is the one that we're going to bring up on the screen now. This is the final logo that we're going to look at, so you guys will see it for a little bit. It does incorporate a great deal of the information that we just saw on their original logo, which they wore from 2003 to 2005. Again, this logo has that timeless feel to it. It's the same, I think, different to the way that we spoke about Newcastle Jets and their logo not really being able to fit into a particular time period, the way that we spoke about Central Coast Mariners and Melbourne Victory perhaps, needing an update. I think Adelaide's has actually aged really well. It's got that off-centre shield, which seemed to have been, all the rage around that 2005-2008 period. Sydney FC had one, Canberra United had one, a few other clubs in and around the NPL level had them as well. It incorporates the colours of South Australia, which is the red, the gold and the blue across here. It incorporates the stars, which are referenced to the previous logo as well. It's the same font in terms of Adelaide United. Perhaps some people might say that it is in need of a rebrand. I think Adelaide actually did reach out perhaps around 18 months to 2 years ago to different graphic designers to submit their own versions of the Adelaide logo, which they might have been looking to do a refresh at that point. But where do you see it? Where do you feel about this particular logo and how it holds up against the rest in the league?
In the middle, I wouldn't say it's a terrible logo by any means. But I mean, I kind of land similar to where we were talking about the old Sydney FC logo, but in a much more extreme way, in terms of this club that has this logo are called the Reds. Now, red is probably not the most predominant colour on this logo. If you switched red and navy around, you're probably looking at a more representative logo of what they're all about. Understand it's the South Australian state colours. It sort of goes along with the AFL State of Origin teams that used to wear those colours. That's fantastic. Love that part of it. But their rival are the Victory, who wear navy blue. I mean, I don't know. And maybe that's narrow-minded as an A-League fan, because obviously you look at world football, Manchester United and Liverpool both wear red. Totally understand all that, but I can't look past that for mine. I don't know. I think it's
someone will have to correct me, and by all means in the comment section below. I think this season's kit is the first time they've incorporated any sort of shade of blue into our home kit. I could be wrong. There could be accents. There could be whatever else, but they are predominantly red shorts, red socks, red shirt, all throughout their history. So it is an interesting point that you make. Do you think this one potentially sits alongside the Mariners and Victory and Perth Glory as one of those ones that is perhaps due a refresh and due an update now that they've got, 15, 16 years of A-League history to draw upon?
Yeah, I think you've hit upon something really pertinent there. I think if navy blue had played a stronger part in their history to date, I think you could make a case for it being higher. I think they did wear navy blue shorts in an FFA Cup.
Yes, that's right. They did indeed.
Part of the season.
But I think again that was just an FFA Cup kit, if I remember correctly. It wasn't their A-League kit.
It was only FFA Cup.
Yeah, it has made an appearance, and I think that was the year they won the FFA Cup, and Craig Goodwin played particularly well in that tournament. I could see why people like it, and I could see why it resonates with people, because Adelaide have been, I think, over the course of the A-League, one of the more consistent teams across that competition. They have won the division with this logo as well, but I think you also make very pertinent points that it doesn't necessarily reflect what was originally a logo that would have worked for this side in 2005 isn't necessarily reflective of the journey that they've been on between 2005 to today. And I think, exactly as you've said, incorporating a little bit more red into their logo, because that is, their nickname, that does incorporate more of their A-League and football identity. I think that would be a really good update to see. So I think needs improvement is the right category for it. Of course, not a terrible logo, not a bad one to look at by any stretch of the imagination, but I think if we've said the same things for the Mariners and Victory and Perth, we probably have to remain consistent and say the same things about Adelaide at the same time. So now we get to the tricky part. We put this off, and I've mentioned it a couple of different times that we're going to come back and look at our different ratings. We're going to start at the bottom. So the few that we've got in the bin at the moment, the Central Coast Mariners 10-year logo, the Melbourne Victory 10-year logo, the 2 original Perth Glory logos, Wellington Phoenix, the Foxtel National Youth League, and the New Zealand Knights. Are there any there that you think we've been a little bit too harsh on or potentially could move up the list?
Only 2 that I would switch would be, I'd put the Phoenix in between the 2 Glory logos. Purely because at least you can say it is a football kit. But at the same time, I think that like I said, that nostalgia of the Perth Glory kit that would follow it, logo that would follow it, is just slightly better, because the Phoenix one is still a dud for sure. I do think the bottom 2 stay where they are, and they do belong there. And the 10-year ones, look, they're at the top of the list because ultimately, they do fail, but ultimately they're definitely towards the higher end.
Sure. I'm more than happy with the order that we think we have it in. There's a cynical part of me that thinks because Foxtel is incorporated into the National Youth League logo, we drop it to the bottom, but maybe that's a little bit harsh on that particular logo. In our needs improvement category, we've got the Western Sydney Wanderers with their star logo for their ACL triumph in 2015. I've put the 2 Canberra United logos down there as well. The reason that I've done that, and I've put them directly next to Adelaide United, Central Coast, Melbourne Victory, Perth Glory, Sydney FC, Gold Coast, because I think they probably fall into that same category where it potentially needs an update. And we mentioned when we spoke about Canberra, it was weird that they made that change, and it was such a minute change to change the shade of green and to bring everything into the badge, which wasn't necessarily an improvement. I think this is one that if we potentially looked at Sydney FC comparing their 2 logos, if we look at Brisbane comparing their logos, if there is a Canberra United logo that comes into the A-League as an expansion side, whatever else in the next few years, I think we would look back and actually, with the benefit of hindsight, say that they could have done a lot more with Canberra, or they could have done a lot more to represent Canberra in a unique way, in a unique fashion. So I think it kind of sits in that same category of the needs improvement ones. It doesn't mean it's a bad logo. I just don't think it's potentially as strong as some of the other ones that we've put in decent or that we've put into the all-star category. Do you have any concerns or issues with where I've put the Canberra United ones?
No, I think that's spot on. I mean, we still we had them in decent for a reason, I guess, as far as sort of seeing them at the very start of that process, as they are nice looking logos. The lime green always, is pleasing. But definitely when you look at everything else, you do see how much they have dated and how much they are in need of a revamp. Probably slightly less so than your Victories and your, the Mariners, but definitely I think where they are is pretty easy to justify.
For sure. I think the bottom row here that we've got with the various A-League, Socceroos logos, all that sort of stuff, that's fine. I don't think we need to adjust. The club logos that we've got, though, are following on from Canberra United, Adelaide United, Central Coast Mariners, Melbourne Victory, Perth Glory, Sydney FC's original logo, and Gold Coast United's original logo, as well as the Adelaide United FC bid logo and the original Brisbane Roar logo. Any there that you think need to be, up towards the top end of needs improvement that you think are maybe in the wrong spots as far as the other logos are concerned and the ones that they sit alongside?
Probably the only thing I would say we did dump on it at the time is probably that the Gold Coast one is a bit too high. I think it really needs to go towards the lower end of those club logos. It can probably go roughly there, maybe even lower, but I definitely think that the Brisbanes and the Adelaide ones, as much as they definitely needed improvement, I do think the Gold Coast one definitely left a lot to be desired.
Yeah, cool. That's fine with me. We'll drop it down below the original Brisbane Roar logo, but ahead of the Queensland Roar just because of the naming convention. And it sits behind the Adelaide United bid logo as well. In the decent tier, we've got Macarthur FC, Newcastle United Jets, Melbourne City Football Club, the W League logo, the E League logo, the A League logo, the Y League logo, Football Federation Australia's 2018 update, New Zealand Football, the Australian team logo, and the PARAROOS. Any jumping out at you there? I think maybe the one discussion we could have is whether we think the W League, E League, maybe A League logos are better than the club ones, or do we keep the separation as it is with the club logos sitting ahead of the national affiliates? Because the national affiliate ones, if you wanted to criticise them, they are a little bit more generic because they are trying to represent the whole of football as opposed to a specific region. But happy to adjust based on.
I think the W League and the E League logos a bit more eye-catching because we've talked about the unique colour that they have. The orange probably doesn't really stick out because it was used so much. So I think that's why it probably sits a little lower. But I guess probably the main talking point is really those three clubs. Which order do they come in? Again, probably at the start of this, I would have had City ahead, but I don't know, the Macarthur, the stars for the Macarthur it's bothering me more and more as I look at it. And the Jets one has grown as aged so well. So I think, maybe that's the order. What obviously I know you don't like the City logo, but is that probably the most agreeable order?
Yeah, I don't hate the City logo. Like, again, these are all decent logos. These are all absolutely fine. There's nothing really wrong with them. It's just I don't look at them and think that's a nice logo or that I'm envious of it in any way. So Newcastle, great logo. Melbourne City, great logo. Macarthur, great logo. Again, I think the Stars put it to bed, but I think Newcastle, Melbourne City and Macarthur in that order is probably the right one for those clubs as far as the decent category is concerned. I don't have any concerns or issues with that. I do have one concern with the list above it, though, which is the All-Star category. As we currently stand, we've got Wellington Phoenix, North Queensland Fury, the Western Sydney Wanderers original logo without the star, Brisbane Roar, Sydney FC's current logo, Western United's logo, and Melbourne Hearts logo. Can you guess which one I think should drop down?
I'm thinking the Fury was one that you weren't overly fond of initially.
Yeah, and it's the football that does it for me. I think it just... there's a reason that brand failed to catch on, and there's a reason that brand failed to capture the hearts and minds of the Townsville public, and there's probably a variety of on-field and off-field reasons for that, given that the team didn't perform particularly well. But even in their first few games, I don't think they ever really sold out their stadium. So I think potentially, with the benefit of hindsight, looking back at it, there was something about this that didn't necessarily resonate with that particular area, and that they didn't necessarily throw themselves behind the way that, I'm sure the FFA hoped, the way that I'm sure their bid team hoped. And it's got the football on it as well, which we've been very consistent about putting the footballs down a little bit. I would make a case that this one goes into the needs improvement category, to be completely honest. I think it skips down out of decent entirely. I think that's the one. I don't think there's anything else there that's really massively out of place, but I would potentially put this one down towards, the top end of needs improvement, because there's obviously something that didn't quite work out there. Again, I think the logo, the colour scheme's good. I think the fonts used are excellent. There's just something about it that doesn't seem to have quite hit the nail on the head in terms of what North Queensland as an area needed from its representation. So that's probably the only one I'd bring down, if you're okay with that.
Fair enough. We've got to compromise. But no, again, I think you're right. I think that it is generic. I will admit that. As much as it is a memorable kit, you can't really tell us exactly what it's trying to go for there. So, definitely it's far from a perfect product. So, yeah, we do have an Elite Six to be left with.
And it does put all of the footballs nicely together in the needs improvement category, with some of the worst footballs down in the bin as well. So that does put Wellington Phoenix, Western Sydney, Brisbane Roar, Sydney FC, Western United and Melbourne Heart. Now, this is where this gets tricky and it gets challenging. I'm happy for us to acknowledge right now at the start, this is just going to be personal preferences. What order do you think these logos sit in?
Yeah, look, if it was solely up to myself, I think I can't see any other logo other than the Wanderers being top, purely for the iconic brand that they started off with. Totally take on board the star comment that ended up sort of, tainting the logo somewhat, but it's a brilliant brand, largely for the strength of that logo. The Wellington one's solid. I think it has grown on me a lot. I didn't really like it as much to start off with, but I think pretty easy to see that it was a huge improvement. But probably the only other one that really I'd be making a case for to be as high as possible is the Heart logo. I'm not sure how high you think it needs to go, but definitely I've always felt, even though it is a little generic, it is quite clever and quite simple.
I quite like the heart logo. I do. I think there's a tier list here. I think Western Sydney is fine to go at the top. I think Sydney FC's I like quite a bit, and I think as I'm looking at it, let's just humour me here for a second. Let's take Melbourne Heart and Western United out of it. I think those four logos, Western Sydney, Sydney FC, Wellington Phoenix, Brisbane Roar, do the best job of the four categories that we've spoken about. I think our key metrics that we gave us, which we haven't had to refer to much, which is always a sign of a good podcast, I think they all look fantastic. I think they're all unique in the way that they're designed. I don't think any of them look like carbon copies of the other. I think they all represent the local area incredibly well with mainly the colour schemes, which we're talking about. But, Western Sydney is trying to differentiate itself, and as you mentioned when you reference, I think like other Australian logos like the Carlton one, incorporating those letters in a unique way is very unique to their particular area. I think the Wanderers name itself and incorporating it into the logo helps represent the larger Western Sydney region. It's not Parramatta, it's not Blacktown, it's not any one unique thing in that area, and I think that suits that area of the world really well. Sydney FC's I think is fantastic. I didn't know until you mentioned it that they have to pay a licensing fee for the Opera House. If they're doing that, credit to them, because it immediately tells people from around the world where they're from, what they're about, and I think the colour scheme, pulling the different shades of blue together that are in their kit as well as the white, is fantastic. I think Wellington's is brilliant. I quite like that logo. The fonts used are fantastic. The Phoenix, the restructuring of that Phoenix is wonderful. Getting that unique New Zealand flair with some of the language used on it along the base as well is great. I think Brisbane's probably the weakest of the four, but it captures, the original Raw line icon that they had in their initial seasons, captures the orange kit, which is what they've been using predominantly for the last few years. It's got its unique font series. It's consistent across with the sash wrapping around the line. It's a proper football logo from a bygone era, and I like the shape of it as well. It's not just a generic shield. It's a specific regional shield. It's more of a V shape than anything else. Melbourne Hearts and Western Sydney's, they're from a different ilk, where they are very much, like modern graphical design logos. This is what a marketing firm would potentially show you as being a progressive football logo, whereas I think the top four are actual football crests and actual football badges. And perhaps that's a little bit too traditional. Maybe I'm not forward thinking enough with that, but I think Melbourne Heart, Western United, it's similar to the likes of Northern Fury, Gold Coast United. It's kind of a little bit representative of a marketing take on a football badge rather than the heart and soul of a club, which is its identity. So I would happily put it in the order that it's currently on screen, which is Western Sydney, Sydney, Wellington, Brisbane, Melbourne Heart, Western United. But I am happy to defer to you. You are our expert guest this week. Where do you think the final seating?
Well, guest is correct. Certainly, I'm not very very good with graphic design, but I think you do make some good points, especially about the top three. I think it's fair. I think maybe swap Heart for Brisbane only because I think, if you look at the general populace, not everyone is sold on the Brisbane logo. Obviously, orange is iconic and they've made that a real focus of their brand. And Heart, okay, there is a generic element to it, but, he's the Heart, the M and the H we talked about before. Okay, it's probably not the elite of football ideas. It is focus grouped, but it doesn't have to be classic to really stand out, obviously. So it's why City fans, I'm sure you might be one of them that would hate the day if City decided not to have a red kit anymore in their across their range. I think it's a sign that people do, even though it was only brief, do miss the Heart logo to an extent, or at least those colours. But yeah, look, I think we can agree on that order.
I think this is a great list. I think it's a tricky job to do. I think a lot of it comes into personal taste, and I think a lot of it comes into how much you buy into certain marketing spiels. But yeah, I would happily hang my hat against this list that we've put together, Michael. I don't think there's anything that jumps out there that I think needs immediate attention.
Yeah, definitely. I think, if people make their own tier lists, I'm sure they'll come up with something completely different because there's a lot more opinions when it comes to logos, particularly if you've got that nostalgia factor or that attachment with an era of a club or your preferred club. But, I think I'd be surprised, at least with some of those more classic elite logos that we've got there, I'd be surprised if anyone would want to to have them any lower than we've got them.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, the link to this tier list maker will be in the description below. You can go and show us your list over on Twitter. We've gotten a whole bunch of them this week for our national championship discussion last week. So by all means, if you do have your own things that you think need to be addressed, either let us know in the comment section below or hit us up in Twitter with versions of your own tier list as well. This format's free for everybody to use. Michael, thank you so much for joining me. Great to finally get you on some video content and on the channel. As always, with these episodes, we've gone way over our allocated time, but that's just the way that some of these discussions work at different periods. If people want to reach you, if people want to check out your content, where is the best place to find you across social media?
Yeah, well, it's quite literally, on the reserve team. My Twitter's there, IslandERM. I think once the A-League starts, I'll be a bit more active, and occasionally I'll rant about West Ham, but I think we're doing well, so I've been quite quiet in that area. Eventually I'll probably get on it a bit more, but definitely I'll be dropping as much content on reserve team as we go, and certainly I don't have much more to plug than that, really.
No, and you'll be joining us in 2 weeks' time for the Western United season preview, which I'm very excited to go through with you as well, which will be fantastic to see. Of course, links to Michael's Twitter, to all of his articles on the reserveteam.com.au will be in the description below as well if you go and want to go and check out his stuff. But really, from myself, from Michael, from the entire reserve team, we just appreciate you guys watching along with us and getting involved in the discussion. If you want to help support the channel, you want to help us grow that little bit more, you can drop a like on this video, gets us higher in YouTube search results, pleases that YouTube algorithm as people look for Australian and New Zealand football content. You can also subscribe to the channel to be kept up to date on all of our future videos. A tier list will continue to release, rankings will continue to release, podcasts will continue to release, a whole bunch of fantastic content coming your way as we build up towards the start of the A-League and W League seasons. More than anything though, we just appreciate you watching. As always, I've been Sean, and we'll see you all again next time.